Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 5th, 2022 episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. I am your host, James Bell, the leader of the Boxing Source. You could check us out through social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, the YouTube channel with videos that are on that YouTube channel. And for those that didn't catch the live stream, of course, the thing is available through iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you use for your podcast apps. You know what I mean? So, what we got here for this particular episode is we're going to be breaking down the action that was, over in Minnesota and also in Australia, as we're going to, talk about, of course, the Fulton-Roman fight and David Morrell Jr. versus Calvin Henderson. We're going to be going over that a little bit as well. Plus, like I said, the undisputed lightweight title fight that took place in Australia between George Kambosos Jr. and Devin Haney. But what we're going to jump on first is the action that was over in the Minneapolis Armory. So we're pretty much going to go from that. You had the unified super bantamweight champion and the 2021 Boxing Source Fighter of the Year, Cool Boy Stephen Fulton, making his defense of those unified titles against former champion Daniel Roman. Of course, Stephen Fulton there that came in with a record of 20 wins and 0 losses. Daniel Roman with a record of 29 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. Of course, Daniel Roman had his bout against MJ, Badaliev, in that particular fight, people thought that he should have got the nod in that bout that was back in 2020 against MJ Akmadaliev, but he ended up on the short end of the stick there, lost the other versions of the super bantamweight title before having a couple wins against Juan Carlos Payano and Ricardo Franco before his bout here against Cool Boy Steph. And with Fulton, of course, came in as the unified champion, had the WBO title after defeating Angelo Leo for it. And then after that, defeating Brandon Figueroa to become unified champion and beating those two world champions. Both of those guys were undefeated. And it was part of the streak where he ended up having fights against 4 consecutive fighters that were unbeaten. And with those 2 wins that he had in 2021, that's what placed him as the Boxing Source Fighter of the Year for 2021. So this was the first defense of those unified titles, WBC and WBO. Of course, leading into the bout, the talk about this was that, Stephen Fulton was, when he was on his way up, he wanted to get one of those title shots against Daniel Roman and wasn't able to get it. And, Daniel Roman acknowledged that. He was like, at the time, I didn't want to, give Stephen Fulton a shot. And, it looked like here, I think we kind of saw why. And you've seen that Stephen Fulton in this particular bout, show why, not only, why I pretty much mentioned him as the Fighter of the Year from last year, but why he is listed on my list for top pound for pound fighters in the sport, and actually coming up next week we'll have the new list of the pound for pound rankings, top 10 pound for pound rankings for the Boxing Source. So y'all be sure to check that out next week. But, when it comes to this particular bout, Stephen Fulton just showed that he was on a whole nother level than Daniel Roman. He was, much faster, much sharper than Daniel Roman. Roman couldn't really keep up with the guy. It just showed that Stephen Fulton was much better than Daniel Roman on every phase. And, he's one of those guys that's very hard worker when it comes to being in the gym, whether it's his own gym that he has or other gyms that are within his city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, of course. But he was just sticking with his jab, and anything that Roman was throwing, he was either dodging it, blocking it, or coming back with a counter shot. And it was just a real good performance there for Stephen Fulton. And the three judges were almost in complete agreement. Mike Fitzgerald, Patrick Morley, and Nathan Palmer gave Stephen Fulton 11 of the 12 rounds. Well, at least all three of them did, but two of them gave him all 12 rounds. So you had two scores of 120 to 108 and one score of 119 to 109 in favor of Stephen Fulton for him to defend the WBC and WBO super bantamweight titles. He stays unbeaten. He stays, there at the level of high level fights there at that super bantamweight division, and with him, having those two belts, and of course, MJ Akhmadaliev having the other two. I mean, for me, it's more about, when will that time come when those two guys fight each other for the undisputed titles. MJ is scheduled to fight Ronnie Rios over in San Antonio on the 25th of this month for his next defense of those unified titles. But after that, they gotta get it moving. I say they gotta get it moving as far as seeing about having that fight between MJ Akhmadaliev and Stephen Fulton for those undisputed titles. I mean, I don't see why that couldn't really happen. I know that there's a little bit of a situation there where you might have some mandatories coming up, so to speak, for these guys. Stephen Fulton had already defeated Daniel Rahman, who was either the top guy or one of the top guys in the rankings for the title belts that Stephen Fulton held. So right now it's just a matter of him, waiting on MJ to go through his particular defense against Ronnie Rios, who's the top guy in the WBA rankings. And after that, then they should just go ahead and have that fight for the undisputed titles. Now, if that doesn't happen, maybe, and this is a very small chance that if one particular person down division below is able to get the win in his bout, it's coming up in a few days, then he could move up and face Stephen Fulton. And that would probably be one of the best fights that could happen south of 126 pounds that's out there. Clearly, because I don't see, anyone in, 115 going up to 118 to fight the monster, the buzzsaw. So I say that person, if he gets the win coming up on Tuesday, then he should find a way to move up to 122 and get that bout there against Stephen Fulton, because outside of that, either he's going to go for undisputed at that particular weight class or move up. But, back to Stephen Fulton's win. I mean, it just shows that, and I know that he kind of like said before this fight that he really doesn't care about, the critics or those or fans or whatever it is and things like that. And that, not enough people recognize him. But you got a few people around that, like I said, that they recognize him as one of the better fighters in the sport of boxing. I know that they were talking about it on Showtime. Mauro Ranallo was saying that, Stephen Fulton is one of the better overall fighters in the sport of boxing. And it's kind of like shown that in his fights that he's had, so far. is that he's there. Like I said, 21-0. Had multiple fights against guys with undefeated records. I told you about the string of four consecutive fighters that were undefeated. He's defeated guys like Joshua Greer Jr. Was notable. Adam Lopez, Blue Nose Lopez, that's out there too. So that's part of his resume, and that's early in his career. I mean, like I said, he only had 21 professional fights so far. That's it. And he was able to do this within 21 fights, 21 wins. One of the better resumes in the sport of boxing, especially around that 118, 122, 126 weight classes. So I think Stephen Fulton, depending on what he does here next, if he's able to get another fight here in 2022, he should be recognized as one of the better fighters in the sport, not just in the division, but in the sport. And like I said, if it's not against MJ Akhmadaliev, who if he gets through his bout against Ronnie Rios, then we might see Stephen Fulton in a much bigger fight. We'll see. But that being said, with him defeating Daniel Roman, like I said, a former world champion, former unified world champion, whatnot. I mean, that's another tip on his cap there as far as like what Stephen Fulton has done, over the course of his professional career. And I'd say hats off to him. Kudos to him for doing that, for putting in that work. So that's the thing about that. But real quick, before we get into that co-feature bout of what happened in Minnesota, we're going to add in another one of our panelists here, checking in from Atlanta. It is the boxing academic in the building. What's going on, Chief? Maybe boxing academic is he's still I guess he's out there mowing the lawn again or something like that. Not seeing him be unmuted here, but I'll see if he can get back in here later on. Wanted to jump into that co-feature bout real quick before boxing academic is able to check in. That was the fight for that WBA regular super middleweight title. David Morrell Jr. against Calvin Henderson. Calvin Henderson came in with a record of 15 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. David Morrell, the WBA champion, unbeaten at 6-0. Of course, has had multiple fights there at the Armory in Minneapolis, and he's pretty much like had that as his adopted home. You know what I'm saying? So for him, I think this was like his his third consecutive fight there at the Armory. He's had like 4 of his 7 fights, I think it was. Yeah, like 1, 2, 3, yeah. 4 of his fights over there in the Minneapolis Armory. So this one here is kind of like, of course, one of his hometown fights. That's where he resides in, is Minneapolis. Just seeing here, check one more time. Boxing Academic is checked back in. I think he had some audio problems, but you there with us, Academic?
Hey, what's going on, James?
Yeah, all right, you all good now, man. What's good with you?
Not much, just cutting grass as usual.
Yeah, see,
my earpiece act like it don't want to work, so I'm gonna be on speakerphone. So don't say no, don't curse. You're gonna make me look bad with my neighbor.
It's the other columnists that usually do that, but I'll see.
Yeah, don't invite Matt today. Because if I tell him that, he gonna do it despite me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he be low key hating on you.
Nah, me and Matt cool. He don't hate.
Yeah.
He's a hater, but he don't hate.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting on the thing there for what happened on Showtime I did talk about the Stephen Fulton, Daniel Roman fight. Now jumping into that David Morrell, Calvin Henderson, where David Morrell ended up stopping Calvin Henderson. Referee Luis Pabon stepped in to stop the bout in the fourth round. Was I guess David Morrell was just too much for Calvin Henderson. I know that Henderson was kind of like trying to compete and stuff like that, but David Morrell is too talented of a fighter, man, and he knows that he has a whole lot of momentum, going for him. Crazy thing with him is like here he is about 7 fights in, and 4 of those 7 fights have been, well, at least they've been scheduled for 12 rounds. And in his third fight against Lennox Allen for the interim belt, that went the full 12 rounds. So he's gone 12 rounds before, and that's something rare that you don't see in the sport of boxing. I know that people talk about, oh my God, Lomachenko was doing all this in the second and third fight. Well, hey, here you got David Morrell Jr. fighting for an interim title in his third professional fight, and he went all 12 rounds. Was able to get the win, and after that has not been past the fourth round. So he's riding the wave of what he's been doing so far, and he is able to defend that WBA version of the super middleweight title, or the regular version, of course. And I'm like, everyone knows that the super champion, quote unquote, of the WBA is Saul Canelo Alvarez, who is scheduled to face the Golovkin guy in September. And so that means that the super middleweight division is going to have to be active in a sense, as far as like the top fighters or the higher rated fighters in that division. And David Morrell, of course, has been very vocal about a certain guy that was a former world champion that did have his recent bout over in the Phoenix area, and that is David Benavidez. And David Benavidez is the interim champion for the WBC. And David Morrell said, "Hey man, you ain't no boogeyman. Listen, I'll fight you right now." And he's been saying that for a while. And David Benavidez said he don't really mind facing, David Morrell at this particular point of his career. And Benavidez's promoter, or whatever it is, Samson Lukowicz, has basically hinted that David Morrell would be likely the next opponent for David Benavidez. And so, with that being said, fight between those two young guys, that would really be a barn burner of a fight. Morrell is 24 years old. David Benavidez is 25 years old. So you got two young guys, there that are on the under 26 or whatnot, and both of those guys are undefeated. Both of those guys can really crack. They stop multiple opponents. And that fight would be one of the bigger fights there in the super middleweight division. I'm definitely looking forward to that. But with that being said, boxing academic, anything on David Morrell Jr. and first with his performance against Calvin Henderson, and also him potentially fighting David Benavidez later this year.
So I only really saw the end of the fight, so I can't really speak on his performance per se because I didn't watch it fully. I only just watched the end, and it kind of looked like everybody was ready to go. Like everybody was like, "Okay, you've made a few stands and it's time to leave." So I can't really speak on his performance.
So it's basically, it is what it is. He got in there, he got the win, and that's that for David Morrell. But What do you think about him overall, as far as like what his potential chances are against someone like David Benavidez?
Well, we always say people who don't get challenged, it's hard to tell how good they are because the guy he was facing, at least from the 2-3 rounds I saw, it wasn't enough to show me that he should be on that level. I think he has to get tested a bit more, and then from there you can make that opinion. Obviously, he's very talented, and he has people behind him, but you can't rate him because he ain't really been tested. So I would say right now, I would not favor him against Benavidez just based off of not having the test to judge him.
Yeah, not having a test, not having enough fights. Like I said, I mean, he's only been 7 fights in, and he's faced Yendris Rodriguez, Quentin Rankin, Lennox Allen, he was undefeated, but I mean, I don't know if that many people would know about Lennox Allen. Mike Gavronsky, stopped him in 3, took out Mario Cazares in 1 round, defeated Alante Fox, within 4 rounds and stuff like that. And also, with this recent bout against Calvin Henderson. So that's 7 fights. And I know that a good number of these guys have had over, or at least over 15 professional fights for 6 or 7 guys, or whatever it is. But, still, like you said, it's not, much of a resume or much of a gauge that would say like, hey, he could really compete against someone like David Benavidez, and with Benavidez, having all of those fights against, Will the Thrill Gorilla, and of course his recent win over David Lemieux. You had his fight last year against Kyron Davis and Ron Ellis too, and Romer Angulo, Anthony Durrell, J. Leon Love. Those are the fighters that David Benavidez has faced and was able to stop all of those guys, except for Graville. Graville was he was able to have 2 12-round decision wins over Ron Gavriel. But he's faced Porky Medina, where he had that 15 punch combination or whatever it was. He's faced Dennis Duglin, Francis Tentu, multiple fighters. So that kind of says what David Benavidez has been able to do. Now there is another columnist coming in here, checking in from Tampa. Good to see that he is able to jump on here. Brother Terrell is checking in. Hopefully everything is all good over there in Tampa and whatnot. I know it was kind of stormy out there for a little bit, but should be all good now, ain't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Word. So you got in here while I was talking about David Morrell Jr. Of course, he had his win over Calvin Henderson. It was a quick little bout for him in a sense. Within 4 rounds, that's been mostly his MO. Is that other than that one time that he went to full 12, he's pretty much stopped the rest of his opponents within 4 rounds. So, I mean, he looks like some people say he's the goods. And like I said, he said that he wants David Benavidez right now. And so I'm like, hey, if he wants to face David Benavidez, hey, I mean, I guess he wants to go ahead with it. But, like I said, David Benavidez is former WBC super middleweight champion and did not lose the belt in the ring. So, I mean, you say he's still undefeated. So, if they actually go forward with this bout later this year, that's going to be a real barn burner of a fight.
Well, yeah, and kind of like Mike, I didn't get a chance to see that fight. I know we talked about that fight last week, because as of yet, I have not been able to see him fight yet, just to get a proper assessment of who he is, his skill set, things like that, and what he brings to the rings. But the first thing I'll say is the fact that he verbally states he wants to fight David Benavidez is so refreshing, right? And the reason why I say that, While we know about Canelo's going up and down from super middleweight to light heavyweight, things like that, there's been just extreme reluctance on the remaining participants at 168 to fight each other, and whether it be David and not necessarily for David Benavidez. He's called out Charlo. He's expressed interest in fighting Andre prior to him moving up to 168, even which still not official yet. He wants to fight Caleb Plant and all the other people that are the significant stakeholders at 168. Mm-hmm. So for this guy to verbally say he wants to fight what's been known as the boogeyman of the division is refreshing, because we do not get that often at all. Not just at 168, but pretty much in other divisions also, whether it be at lightweight, 135, or even welterweight to a degree in that regard. Because there's fights that can be made, like for example at welterweight, we know we got Ennis out there who's calling out other people like that, but they don't want to fight him because he's an up and coming fighter. I mean, the guy's established now, but pretty much people think he's a high risk, low reward fight at this point. So for this guy that wants to say he wants to fight David Benavidez, and Benavidez reciprocates, said, "I'll take the fight. Let's make it happen." We just don't see that often at all, you know, because we're in that age of protect your zero, you know. So I'm definitely gonna go back this week and watch that on Showtime, because I need to definitely get educated on who this guy is and what he can do. It's just kind of project on how good he is, how far he can go, and things like that. Strengths, weaknesses, stuff like that, you know. So that all matters, because that all comes in terms of matchmaking and things like that. So, you know, because you know sometimes you can hide behind matchmaking, Canelo, you know that, cherry picking, things like that. But if you're a true and bona fide fighter, you can adjust your style to whether it be a boxer puncher or a puncher boxer, things like that at all. So I'm definitely going to go back and watch him within this probably tomorrow or this week. Definitely sometime this week, so I can get to study on who he is. Definitely.
Yeah, and I mean you'll be able to see his overall skill set and things like that in his fights that he had here, you know, against Calvin Henderson. Of course, his previous bout against Alante Fox, that was in the same venue. You know, I gotta look back too, because I think that I was in the building when he had his second pro fight against Quentin Rankin over in the MGM National Harbor over this way in the DC area. But like he's kind of like just showing like that he could really do some things. But note about that fight against Quentin Rankin, that was actually north of 168 pounds. You know, that was at like he was weighing in a little bit over 170 pounds for that particular bout. So that's crazy that you go from, you know, being there at 170 pounds or weighing in at 170 in his second pro fight, and then in the third pro fight he was able to win the interim WBA super middleweight title and has kind of like had the string of knockouts since then. But the other good, you know, the good point that you brought up, Terrell, is that I mean you see this guy, he's 6-0 now, 7-0, whatever it is, and he's challenging the more established guys in the super middleweight division, those guys that were, you know, former world champions, and David Benavidez and Caleb Plant and guys like that. And with David Benavidez, he's you know there to reciprocate, because he's like, man, I'll take on all challenges. He kind of like brought up that point when you know, weeks back when they were talking about Canelo saying, hey, these guys could fight each other, you know, and stuff like that. Well, you know, Benavidez said, okay, cool, I'll fight all these guys, I don't care. And he's like, you know, even with that when he had that stoppage win over David Lemieux, he's like, yo, Plant, Morrell, Charlo, where the contract at? You know what I'm saying? Where the contract at? Y'all want to fight me? Where the contract at? So he's willing to, well, at least he's saying that he's willing to face all of those guys. But on the flip side, like he had with the example of Jerome Buzinis, he's there. He's a young guy. He's like 26, 27-0. You know, all but a couple of his fights have been by KO or stoppage. And he's trying to call out those guys like the Sean Porters and the Keith Thurmans, and, you know, of course, the title holders there, Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford and whatnot. But they're not necessarily reciprocating. I know that Spence and Crawford are slated to fight each other. Even though that there's some haters out there that still think that fight's not going to happen. It's going to happen. And with those guys, being busy, it's like, okay, where these other top level guys at welterweight that would want to face Boots Ennis, and you don't really see that. You don't really see, someone like a Keith Thurman who's been established, who's been a unified champion, saying like, hey, he doesn't want to, kind of like mess up his, bread or his status in order to face someone up and coming like a Jerron Boots Ennis, And a while back, it was like Sean Porter, he pretty much like said, hey, I mean, that's too much, for the amount of money, I'm trying to keep my status. And like you said, high risk, low reward. I mean, even Boots Ennis' father, said that, shout out to Bozy Ennis, Coach Bozy Ennis. He said, hey, these guys know that it's a high risk fighting someone like Boots. Because if you lose and you lose badly, that's it. It's a wrap, So for someone like David Benavidez and his, his promoter, Samson Lickowitz, saying like he's openly available to having David Benavidez fight David Morrell, that's a good thing to hear. You know what I mean? So I like that. I really do like that. I did kind of talk about the fight between Stephen Fulton Jr. and Daniel Roman, where Fulton Jr. almost pitched a near shutout against Daniel Roman and kind of showed that he is, one of the better fighters there at 122 pounds and probably south of 126. Although you could probably say that from 126 on down, he's probably the best fighter out there. Yeah, I know that Inoue is in that range, but we'll see what Inoue does first on Tuesday, and if he gets through that, then they might be able to fight each other. But Terrell, if you was able to check out anything with that Fulton-Roman fight, you could drop your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and once again, I didn't get a chance to see the Fulton fight, but in our last podcast, during our closing remarks, I made a statement where I said I want to see Fulton grow into his defenses, grow into that division. And I mean, not he's new to the division, but growing to the performance of a champion, and scores certainly reflected that. And I'm just so glad to see that that he gave a definitive performance, gave no doubt, and certainly put the rest of the division on notice, and also fighters that could come to fruition within that division, things like that. So, I'm gonna definitely go back and watch that this week and everything. But just, I'm honestly, I mean. Sometimes we just talk as boxing analysts in a time, but sometimes we're just glad to see a certain result come out. You see what I'm saying? Not like, for example, the Haney fight. We'll get to that. I know that. But for the Fulton fight, right? Prior to that, when he fought Figueroa, there was a lot of people just kind of hating on him. He's not good enough. Figueroa's going to take him out and take his belt, things like that. And knew that just didn't happen. And now he beat Figueroa. He's now going on to his defense of his unified title, things like that. And not just that, he gave a great and a brilliant performance. And like I said, the main thing, the scores were reflective of that performance. So there can be, but basically, if there's any haters out there, shut up. And because Mike said that he can't have no cussing, I should cuss up a storm right now, even though I'm probably not.
I'm in the house now. You can say all the shit, fucks, and dams you want.
But no, that's not my normal forte. But like I said, I'm just glad to see Fulton had a commanding performance. And once again, the scores were reflective of that. And so just at this point now, he's going to get to the point where he can call his shots and fight, go and fight the fight that he wants to fight. If he keeps it up, nobody's going to want to fight him. If he keeps it up at this point, at that rate.
Yeah.
So, but once I'm just as a boxing fan, I'm just glad to see that brother go out and do his thing and give a commanding performance. Definitely.
I mean, yeah, and the thing about it is, like I said, he's faced those multiple guys that were undefeated before he beat him. And you have like these other fighters at 122 that he could face. But as of right now, Stephen Fulton has defeated 3 of the top 5 rated fighters in the division from Ring Magazine. Like number 3, number 4, and number 5. He's beaten all 3 of them. There's only one fighter that he hasn't fought, and that's, of course, the other unified champion, MJ Akhmadaliev. And if Akhmadaliev is able to win his bout against Ronnie Rios later this month, and they go forward and they have this particular bout for the undisputed titles, and Stephen Fulton wins that, then he'll have wins over everybody else that was rated in the top 5. Now, I know that I've already named him Fighter of the Year from last year, but that like you would have 4 consecutive. That's crazy. He could have 4 consecutive bouts against the other guys that are rated in the top 5 in Ring Magazine. That, like, you don't see that. You don't really see that in boxing. You know what I'm saying?
And I'm not trying to be funny, but stuff like that will get you, even though you young in the game, a spot on people's pound for pound list. I mean, outside of people being like paid and political and stuff, what I'm saying is his claim to the throne is a legitimate claim. Obviously, he ain't nowhere near number 1 or nothing, but all I'm saying is, like you said, that's a great stat to throw up. He has faced 3 out of the top 5, with him being the other one. So he only got 1 guy left to face. His claim at that undisputed is a legitimate claim. It ain't no, oh, I fought somebody who ended up not being that good, you know?
And let me ask you guys a question, because there's a certain frequent panelist that comes on here pretty often, right? That makes a statement. He basically states, I don't give a damn about the lower weight divisions, because and the reason why he says that, large, because they're like usually separated between 2 and 4 pounds, things like that, right? But at the same time, I mean, that's his opinion. 646, that's his opinion. Everyone has their opinion. We know that. I don't follow that, because for one, you're boxing, right? You're a professional boxer, right? So what I said, you mastered a skill set, and that a lot of other people cannot do. We don't play boxing. You are a boxer. You're a boxer, things like that. So, I mean, but even though you're in the lower weight divisions, sometimes it's separated by 4 pounds, things like that. I don't care, because you're a professional boxer. You're a championship boxer. In this case of Fulton, when we take a look at him, just look what, like I said, this guy's fist. He's fighting the top people in this division. He's and just wiping them out. So I respect that. I respect the skill set. I respect all that goes along with that. Just sacrifice, the discipline, all of that. So I'm definitely not in concordance with saying, oh, because he's in the lower division, it doesn't matter. I could care less. So I respect that.
I mean, I feel him to an extent. Like, the fight that's happening 2-3 days from now don't necessarily make them number 2 pound for pound. That's just propaganda.
Yeah, fair you on that one. Because that's supposed to be something where, and I think with that particular bout, that's the rematch there between Naoya Inoue there in Inoue-Donaire. Yeah, they did say that their last bout was like Fight of the Year material and stuff like that. But it's something, because Inoue got his eye busted up. Inoue-Donaire is supposed to like be a little bit past it. So it's like, okay, if Donaire is really past it, is it something about where Inoue is at this particular point? Or at least they're at 118, or is it something where like Donaire is just able to defy, what is it, like odds or stuff like that, being at 39 years old, you know what I'm saying? But with that particular fight, I'm like, it's supposed to be a unification bout, of sorts. and it'll pretty much like say, okay, who's the top guy there at 118. But it's almost like if you look at that particular division, the bantamweight division, one, you don't really see like all of those guys that's like kind of like really facing each other. Like Casemiro was supposed to fight both of those guys at one point, and had weight issues or scheduling issues and couldn't do that. And then some of the other guys that are on that list, either Inoue has beaten them already, or he hasn't fought them. So with that being said, there's still like a good number of things to sort out in that particular division. But outside of that, it's like, hey, if Inoue gets this win, depending on his contract situation or whatever it is, he might be able to move up, move up a division and fight, one of those guys. Or if he does stay at 118, there he could go up against Paul Butler for that undisputed title. And of course, like a lot of people would favor Inoue in that particular bout against Paul Butler, but still, if he just goes ahead and is undisputed, then there's that. But given that, with Inoue, I think a lot. There will be some people that'll give Inoue a lot of credit if he's able to become undisputed at 118 pounds. And it's just that like y'all were mentioning, those guys are like 118, 115, 112. Some of them don't really get as much credit, in pound for pound because of them moving up, just 2 pounds or 3 pounds or 4 pounds or whatever it is. And things don't get significant until you get north of 130. It goes from like I said, 115 to 118 to 122 to 126 to 130. And then it's just 135 and then 140. And then the weight difference goes up a bit. But, still, I have to see like how much credit will be like given out to someone like Inoue if he does go ahead and defeats Donaire in this rematch here coming up on Tuesday. So there's that. So that kind of like is a quick little tidbit on that bout that's going to be happening on the 7th in Japan. But I do want to get into that main event over in Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, Australia. The undisputed, be like Umar Ifan Tuesday 3 times. The undisputed lightweight championship bout. George Kambosos Jr. and Devin the Dream Haney. Both of these guys came into this bout unbeaten. Of course, Kambosos unified champion. Ifan Tunde 3 times. Unified champion against the real WBC lightweight champion coming into this bout. Devin Haney came in there 27-0. And man, there was like a whole lot of stuff leading into this bout, whole lot of trash talk coming in from George Kambosos, whole lot of things where it kind of like got a little bit on the level of disrespectful with what Kambosos was saying, all the stuff about customs and passports and visas, travel visas, work visas for Devin Haney's team, all that stuff ended up getting cleared up by the day before the fight. And Devin Haney was a clear mind, clear body, and all of that. And he went out there and he took George Kambosos to school. That was a 12-round lesson by Devin Haney. Use the jab, just use that jab, kept his right hand up. All they had to do was just measure the distance, had great footwork. George Kambosos was right in front of him. So he just kept pumping that jab at him. Bam, bam, bam. And that was basically all he needed. He had like a couple of other big punches that were in there over the course of the bout, but there was nothing that George Kambosos really could have done to really frustrate Devin Haney. He wasn't the the taller fighter. He wasn't the bigger fighter. You couldn't bully him. You couldn't push him around. You couldn't make no adjustments. Nothing like that. and went through 12 rounds, and yes, it was a unanimous decision victory for Devin the Dream Haney, for him to become the real undisputed champion. No dispute. That means that everybody, all those sanctioning bodies are in agreement. WBC, WBA, IBF, WBO, they all will recognize Devin Haney as the champion. So, does get that win. My only criticism about the scorecards, only one, pretty much like one judge gave him 10 rounds. Two judges said it was 116, 112. I'm trying to figure out what 4 rounds did George Kambosos win. That's what I'm trying to figure out. You know, I mean, I just saw the repeat of the same thing pretty much like every single round. So I'm trying to figure out what rounds George Kambosos won. You know, so but I mean, Devin Haney, you know, was really ecstatic, you know, getting the win. His father Bill Haney was talking so much shit after the fight. He's like, "Yo, see, yeah, I told you. It was almost like a little scuffle could have happened after the fight. You know what I'm saying? But you know, big ups to Devin Haney, man. Like, he went through all of that adversity and all that type of stuff, and he was able to get in there and get the win. And, you know, according to like some people, a couple people, they feel like he had the toughest road to undisputed because of the politics and what he had to do in order to get that fight for undisputed. Because Lomachenko, they wouldn't have him fighting Lomachenko, they wouldn't have him fighting Teofimo Lopez, and he had to, according to Bob Arum, sign with the right promoter in order to get this fight. And that's crazy that he had to do it, but he did what he had to do, took short money or whatever it was, still went in there and still got the win. And I don't know if you want to see a rematch of that, because that was just a whole, like I said, a whole boxing lesson. You know what I'm saying? So real quick, Terrell, jump on that and see you know, what you thought about Haney's win over George Kambosos.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the fight immensely, and like I was saying in regards to like the Stephen Fulton fight, sometimes the main time we're talking as it's like boxing analysts, but sometimes because we're fans of the sport, you have to take a step back and just be happy for a result and truly happy for a fighter, right? We know just with Haney's story, he was lobbying to fight Lomachenko back in the day until they elevated Lomachenko to franchise champion. Because they didn't want him to fight Haney at that time, which would have been questionable, and like probably in Haney's favor with his skill set and his youth and things like that. So they basically made Haney the quote unquote email champion, but he still was a WBC champion and things like that. So, but just going fast forward back to the actual fight, the leader to the fight, very just, you know, like we talk about a lot of times. Only in boxing do you see this level of trash talk, this level of bullshit that goes on. Only in boxing, right? And even some in on things what Thursday, Friday, whatever it was, when Kambosos missed weight, this guy actually said that, oh, that's part of the deception strategy. I mean, I'm like, what?
The art of war.
Yeah, I'm like you dumbass. You can actually lose your belts on the scale if you want to fuck around and lose weight and not make weight within that within the designated time. And you trying to say that's you planned that? Come on. I mean the level of bullshit in the leadership fight is legendary. I mean, you look at Kambosos got a $10 million purse versus Haney's $2 million purse. I mean, through no fault of their own, Haney's father had to get over there up on last minute visa appeals, things like that. Even Haney's cut man was not allowed in the fight due to some whatever paperwork issues that he had to go through. So he was allowed in the fight. I mean, it was just for Haney, it was just blow after blow after blow, mental blow, prior to the actual fight actually even happening, right? And still, when you look at the fight, what did we talk about last week? Judging. No American judges. No Australian judges. I forgot. I think one of the judges from Finland or something like that or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But when they were announcing the scores, 116, 112, I said, "Oh Lord, here we go." They're about to take it from this young kid. They're gonna have to take it from him. I was so nervous. But once all the scores were announced and announced a winner, I was thankfully relieved in that regard. When we look at the actual fight, and actually, JR, you definitely called a big point from last week. You said Haney would definitely enjoy a size advantage over Kambosos, right? And that was apparent. That was definitely apparent. His size just come in a matter of where it wasn't just that. He's just a better fighter. He's a better athlete and better fighter.
Yep.
Able to maneuver around the pocket in and out just like that. The speed was like night and day. And the thing about it, Kambosos was a live dog throughout the entire fight. I'm not saying he got dogged, but he was able to. Let me say this: if he had the will versus put like this. Sometimes we see ourselves doing stuff, but we just can't do it, and that's what the best thing I say about Kambosos. He saw himself doing things, but he knew it. He just didn't do it. He didn't adjust. He couldn't adjust to the speed. He couldn't catch up to Dane's speed. Of course. He caught Haney with a couple right hands and hooks, stuff like that. That's going to happen within the course of a 12-round fight. That's going to happen. But other than that, the main thing, the skill set was so different. It was purely an A-level fighter versus a B-level fighter, and 9 times out of 10, the A-level fighter is going to win most of those times in that regard. And even today, I was looking at some of the post-conference talk, and once again, Kambosos is out of his damn mind. He actually sat there at the post conference and said, "Oh, I hurt him quite a few times." Well, the thing about if you actually hurt him, why didn't you capitalize on that? You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And the thing about it, if he hurt Haney, I didn't see that. Did you see Haney get hurt?
I definitely didn't see it.
Not at all. I didn't see him get hurt at all. And I said, if you think you hurt him, then you should capitalize on that. Cut that ring off and capitalize on that moment in order to cause further damage. And Kambosos also stated in the post conference that there's a lot of bull crap that was going on with the ref. No, the ref was straightforward. Didn't lean to one side at all. If anything, it was Kambosos that was trying these little tactics here and there and things like that. There's even one time where Kambosos actually was holding Haney's, I believe was right hand.
Yep.
And try to hit him and hit him on purpose while holding the guy's hand. I said, and thank God the ref saw that. The ref caught that.
Yep.
And the ref was able to catch some more of the little antics that Kambosos was trying, things like that. And Kambosos also said that, Haney was holding her excessive holding. Well, if there was an excessive holding, did you get called for it? Was there a point deduction for it? No. So that didn't come into play in that regard. And one of the main things I'm glad to see is Kambosos can't say that Haney came to run. Nope. Haney was right there in his face the entire time, pumping that jab, boom, just punch him with that jab and just counter him. And like Haney said, he took away his best weapons, away from the power hand, things like that. Your classic. He gave him a classic boxing lesson, and I was just so glad to see that. And this main thing, glad to see they came up with the right decision. So, I mean, it's so much to dive into in this fight, but I'll just cut off from right there.
Yeah, man, and the thing about it is with what, like you said, first off with the politics of it, for Devin Haney, like people got to understand that for him to get his first title at lightweight, they did not in the shot to get the WBC title initially when it was vacated, by Mikey Garcia, because it was supposed to have a fight between Devin Haney and Luke Campbell for that belt, and that didn't happen. And the WBC said, "Hey, let's have unified champion Vasily Lomachenko go up against Luke Campbell." And I'm like, come on, man. And then they try to come up with a tournament that was supposed to be for the vacant belt, but then they pulled that stuff off, right? So with that happening, and the WBC having their rules, so their supposed rules in place that if you win a vacant title, you're supposed to face 2 consecutive mandatory challengers, right? Okay, cool. Lomachenko wins that vacant WBC belt. That means his first fight should have been against Devin Haney, since Devin Haney ended up winning the interim WBC title. They didn't do that. They said, hey, we'll elevate, or we'll name Lomachenko franchise champ, and then we'll hand Devin Haney the belt. And then after he had one defense where, he ended up getting injured, of course, and so he was out for a little bit. But once he was back active, they wanted him to have those 2 bouts against the 2 mandatory challengers. But guess what? Neither one of those guys even wanted to face Devin Haney. So that's why, Haney, ended up, facing Jorge Linares and Jojo Diaz last year, because the guys like the Javier Fortuna, when Fortuna was initially a top-rated guy, he didn't want to face him. So he ended up facing Jojo Diaz, and Jojo Diaz, ended up winning. And, thankfully for Jojo Diaz, he was able to step up and face Devin Haney. And like Jojo gets a whole lot of credit, for facing the guys like Devin Haney and Gary Russell Jr., because a lot of these fighters didn't want to face Gary Russell. They didn't want to face Devin Haney, and Jojo Diaz stepped up and he faced both of those guys. And that's at 126 and 135. It's crazy. That's like 2 whole divisions, and he skipped one, but still, he was able to do that. But like I said, Javier Fortuna wouldn't face him. Ryan Garcia wouldn't face him. When they're supposed to be the the top-rated guys or whatnot, right? So how you gonna have that, and y'all don't even have the guys available for Devin Haney to fight? So he had to go through all that. He had to go through the whole stuff with Vasily Lomachenko, and he had to go through that bull crap with Teofimo Lopez talking about he ain't the real champion, I'm the undisputed champion, all that bull crap. You know what I'm saying? See, I'm trying to keep it a little bit cleaner there for Vasily Academic. But Teofimo, was messing around, and he ended up getting beat by, Kambosos. And, now here you have this first defense for Kambosos or whatever it is. He goes up against Devin Haney, and he gets schooled by Devin Haney for a clear decision win. And Devin Haney is the undisputed champion, like I said, without dispute. They say that they're going to have a rematch. I don't know why they would have a rematch. The only reason why they should have a rematch is if they paid Devin Haney close to that $10 million that George Kambosos got, this first bout. That's the only reason they would probably have that. But outside of that, there's really not really much of a need for a rematch there between Devin Haney and George Kambosos. I think Haney kind of like proved himself in this instance. And, in a sense, if they don't have a rematch, I wouldn't be surprised one iota if Bob Arum sets up a fight between Devin Haney and Vasily Lomachenko. We'll have to see what the numbers is. Numbers don't make sense with all parties involved. With Bob Arum, with Devin Haney, and Lou DiBella. There with DiBella Entertainment, as DiBella is a promoter for George Kambosos. I know that Peter Kahn, I think, probably put some money in for this particular bout as well. He's a manager for George Kambosos and whatnot. But as far as the rematch, we'll see if all the numbers, were good enough for all parties involved. Then they'll say, hey, yeah, let's go ahead and go for the rematch. But if not, then you'll probably see Devin Haney against Vasily Lomachenko either in Las Vegas or in New York City, Madison Square Garden for those undisputed titles. Because y'all know that they're still trying to get Lomachenko up there, trying to do something. over at lightweight. But if I'm telling you right now, if Devin Haney and Vasyl Lomachenko face each other next, Haney's gonna stop him. He's gonna stop Lomachenko. Put it on the record. Devin Haney stops Vasyl Lomachenko, especially with it being at 135. He's gonna stop him. That's what I got on that. Want to get like boxing academic? You've been chilling. You got anything on Haney's performance against George Kambosos?
Yeah, I do. So obviously it was a good performance for Devin Haney. He did what he was supposed to do. I have a disagreement with Terrell in that he said it's an A fighter versus a B fighter. I think you overrating both of these guys. It's a B plus fighter against a C plus fighter. Because it takes a different skill level to be A. I don't think Devin Haney, we can put him in the ranks of an A just yet, because that's the likes of a Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather and Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. I think B plus is more relevant. And what I found out about Kambosos was that he's a slightly above average fighter, which a C plus is very fitting. And so yesterday's fight was the tale of how you fight an above average fighter between two separate fighters, and the outcome can be totally different. Obviously, two separate fighters have two separate skill sets, but you take one fighter in Devin Haney, who led with the jab, who finished with the jab, who led with the jab, he hit him with the right hand, and he finished with the jab to where he could get out and use that jab as sort of as a defensive jab. When you first started off, Kambosos was very responsive. He was throwing shots, and he was literally just inches or millimeters away from landing. If he wasn't landing, and it was just like, oh crap, if he keep this up, one of these punches gonna land. You have another fighter in Teofimo who didn't jab, and you see the difference in those two fights. It's just so much easier to make a above average fighter be an above average fighter if you jab. That's the moral of the story. Kambosos, as Terrell said, to me, Kambosos had a point in the fight where he had a crossroad. And me and Terrell was messaging, and it was like we both was like, well, he about to get reckless. And the crazy thing is, when he got to that fork in the road, he looked, and he was like, I'm not willing to go to that place. He didn't even press it enough to get like super, super reckless. And I would go so far to rate it as a character thing. I'm not saying like nothing bad about him, but what I'm saying is, in the face of adversity, where he needed to like crank it up, and maybe cranking it up was him pushing the line a little bit and trying to like do something to like really change the course of the fight. I think he just kept with the flow of the boat. Like he just let the boat go in the direction it was going versus trying to like row it in against the current. And that to me was like, yeah, slightly above average fighter. And it makes me sort of, Teofimo is a good fighter, but Teofimo in himself is a B fighter, B level fighter, maybe even a B minus, probably a B minus level fighter.
Yeah, because with Lopez, it was almost like he was too smug going into that bout against George Kambosos Jr. And that level of overconfidence pretty much like got him. He kind of like got humbled in a bit early, but he didn't even really adjust to that. But that's kind of like a slight on him and his coach, trainer, father,
yeah,
senior, right?
Definitely.
So So, like you said, you know, if you're putting someone like George Kambosos as like a C-level fighter or, you know, like a C- fighter, then yeah, he like against someone like a Devin Haney, if Devin Haney, like you said, is not A level, but he's like B level or whatever it is, he's gonna make a C- or a C-level fighter look really, you know, bad out there. And
Average.
yeah, very average. And you talked about that point where George Kambosos had to realize that he had to really do something in order to get back into the fight, you know, and he couldn't really do that. He couldn't make no adjustments. He couldn't see that, you know, in the course of the fight that I saw, especially in the second half of the fight, when Devin Haney was like either jabbing or kind of like was within range of George Kambosos, a lot of times he would duck down in order to get away from Kambosos or
Get under him.
get away from the punch, right? And for some reason, George Kambosos couldn't really realize that and just, you know what, instead of, you know, throwing up high, throw a lead uppercut, or throw a feint and then throw a lead uppercut, because you know that Devin Haney is having a tendency of ducking downwards. So try to meet him where he's going to be at. Go there, left uppercut, bam. I know you say you got a left hook, but at least try to do a left uppercut, because that left hook wasn't going to work while Devin Haney was upright, throwing a jab and keeping his right hand up. He's looking for that left hook coming back from you. So why not try to do something where you could pretty much like counter with the right, and if he's going downwards, you go with the left uppercut. But you've never seen that from George Kambosos. And then there was like another point where he lunged out when throwing a punch, and he ended up having his face go through the ropes. So it was like you didn't really realize the urgency of what was happening within the 8th round, the 9th round, or whatever it is. And you didn't step up the pace to where you could be very efficient. But, you know, like you said there, Boxing Academic, if he's like a C level or C- level fighter, he's just going to be someone that's right there in front of you, right in the line, not moving his head, not moving out a little bit, not being known for like trying to see what you're doing and throw counters or try to slip a jab and then come back with a counter or something like that. Like he's not, you know, at that particular point. And I think with this particular bout, see, that's the George Kambosos that I expected to be in the ring against Teofimo Lopez, because before that bout against Teofimo Lopez, I really wasn't that sold on George Kambosos. I wasn't that impressed in his fights against Mickey Bay. I wasn't impressed in his fight against Lee Selby. I thought that he lost against Lee Selby. But you know, the judges, you know, got him the win, and that win set him up to be a mandatory challenger for Teofimo Lopez, and he, you know, got the bread, or you know, whatever bread that he got. It should have been a little bit north of $1 million because of the whole purse bid stuff or whatever it is, maybe. And then after that, he turns around and he gets, you know, all this bread for this fight against Devin Haney. So he came out good from a financial standpoint for his, you know, past 2 fights. But from a skill perspective, like he's not there. He's just not there.
Well,
I got a few more points as well.
Also, real quick, just to kind of build on what you're saying right there. So at this point, now we know that for Devin Haney, for example, the world is his. This guy can go and fight who he wants to fight. What about for Kambosos, right? So we know, put it like this, I fully expect him to exercise the rematch clause, right? Because you look at if he doesn't do that, what's next for him? Nothing.
He can't.
Mediocrity. Because think about it, at this point, and even in this fight with Haney, we know from our view it was pretty much a one-sided affair, and at least one of the judges had it right in scoring that correctly with the 110 score. But so I mean, for this fight, he at this point he has to exercise the rematch clause, and the main motivator for that is money. It's period money.
You go.
So, I mean, because the thing about it, with that many people at the live gate, I don't know how much money that's going to generate, things like that in terms of U.S. dollars. But with that, obviously, it should be a significant amount. even if it's not at the same Marvel studio, Marvel stadium, whatever, or even at a smaller stadium, it's still going to be a significant live gate. So and you get for them, they can't just ignore that. So in a sense, it's going to be a cash out fight for the rematch in that regard. Because think about it, if he doesn't exercise the rematch, what's next for him? Mediocrity, because he's going to have to come back on the road to the stateside and fight some other opponent that doesn't have much celebrity status in regards to Haney and trying to get those belts back. I mean, and according to him and his team, they were robbed, even though he gave Haney full credit. But just once again, just what's next for him? So it just makes sense for him to exercise rematch clause. That's the most logical thing for him and his team to do.
Yeah, I agree. I personally thought the fight was boring. Personally, and I'm not even slighting Devin Haney, because it ain't Devin's fault that he followed his game plan and it worked. People will likely say Devin Haney's fights are boring, which I have said that before, but it ain't his fault that his opponents don't have enough skill to make it more exciting. I think it was boring, but it ain't Devin's fault. It's his opponent's fault. Number 2, Devin beats Tio with the jab. And number 3, I think Linares might do well against Kambosos, if not beat him.
That could be a possible fight if Linares is still active or whatnot.
Like if he ain't like a shell of himself, then he should do well.
Right. But like Terrell said, there's got to be a rematch. There's got to be a rematch, because it would be foolish in Kambosos' part. It would be foolish in Lou DiBella's part, and it would be foolish in Kambosos' manager's part, man. That they wouldn't go through with the rematch. They already got like $10 million for this initial fight. So whatever split that they have, I guess an agreement for the rematch or whatever it is, they're gonna have to go for it, because there's no way that George Kambosos Jr. is getting anywhere near that, facing anybody out there in the ring, and this also kind of like goes to a point here too, in reference to the thing with Devin Haney and getting a shot. And I know that George Kambosos is saying like, oh, I was the one that stepped up when Teofimo Lopez said that he wouldn't fight him, and Vasyl Lomachenko wouldn't fight him. I'm like, wait a minute, stop right there, bro. You were real close to facing Vasyl Lomachenko in your first defense of those titles. And if it wasn't for the whole thing that was going over in the border of Ukraine or the former Soviet Union or whatever it is, you would have been facing Vasyl Lomachenko. You wouldn't have been facing Devin Haney. You know what I'm saying? So all the stuff about, Devin Haney's a rat and all that type of stuff, like he was not really up to facing Devin Haney. They were ready real quick to have him fight Vasyl Lomachenko, and he would have been satisfied. Lou DiBella, sorry, Lou DiBella, but you would have been satisfied. Peter Kahn, the manager, he would have been satisfied if they would have had a 2-fight deal between George Kambosos Jr. and Vasyl Lomachenko, because their main goal, ever since beating Teofimo Lopez, was to get a multi-fight deal. That was it. That's all they wanted. They wanted a multi-fight deal. They didn't care who it was against. They just wanted a multi-fight deal, so that at the very least, they're guaranteed some type of money in the second fight. It's like Terrell was saying, if Kambosos went in there against a Devin Haney or against a Vasyl Lomachenko and lost and didn't have a rematch clause, nothing like that, he would have probably been right back to mediocrity. I'm like, most of his fights, were over in Australia for a good amount of time. He's had a couple of fights over in Vegas or Greece or, New York City before, going into the fight against Lee Selby in Wembley Arena. But outside of that, you ain't really get a large following out there in Australia like that, unless if your name is what, Tim Zoo. Tim folks were like on Tim Zoo. You know what I'm saying? They were like on them, or like even with Jeff Horn, that run with Jeff Horn was very, very brief. So if you're not gonna have that type of following, or you don't have that big following organically before you even fight for these titles, what makes you think that you're gonna get any type of interest after losing these titles, unless if you face Devin Haney again? That's not gonna happen. So there was only one way that he can go in this instance, and that is against Devin Haney once again, because ain't nobody else gonna ain't gonna face him, man. Like Ryan Garcia, he got his thing going on with Javier Fortuna that's coming up. Tank Davis ain't gonna face him. Nah. He might end up facing Michelle Ali Rivera or somebody like that, next, or I don't know, a rematch with Isak Cruz before facing Ryan Garcia in 2023. But everybody else in the lightweight division that's up there, nah, they ain't gonna be calling George Kambosos' number. Nah, they ain't gonna do that. So I'm like, he's gonna have to. Man, I like, if I was him, I'd be like Monday or Tuesday, I'm making that phone call. Yeah, I got this 10 million, and you know what? I'm kind of liking this. What was that deal? The split for the rematch? Yeah, I know I got beat real bad. I know I got embarrassed, but yeah, that split's kind of looking real, real good right now. I'll take it. I'll go ahead and take it and click. So he just gets paid, like you said, Terrell. Cash out. Because if he loses again, and gets embarrassed again, that's it for him. Like, there's no real there will really be no real interest for George Kambosos to face anybody out there in the lightweight division, unless what he's gonna face someone like a Richard Comey, or maybe he faces his stablemate Emmanuel Tago. Like, outside of that, who he gonna face?
Ryan
Nah.
and just real quick, on Ryan Garcia, he made a tweet basically saying it was a boring fight, pretty much. I'm like, dude, who are you to talk? You are no one to talk. Look who you faced in your last fight. Look at your issues that you went through within the past year. It's just all cap come from the dude. It's ridiculous. But like I said, for Kambosos, at this point, if he doesn't take the rematch, he's just gonna be a name opponent. And that's it. He's and just had that glory of being announced as, he's a former lightweight champion and stuff like that. Yep. But that only carries you so far. It doesn't carry the purse, things like that. It just gives you a name. That's it. So at this point, either rematch or fade into the black. That's all you can do. Definitely.
Yeah, Ryan Garcia out here talking about Devin Haney had a bland fight. It was a NyQuil type of performance. And like he said, what is it on his tweet? He said, "Congrats to Haney, but it was definitely just a bland fight. Anyways, I'll just say, you know who I want after Fortuna. Let them have their rematch." That's, of course, Haney and Kambosos. Absolutely NyQuil type of performance. And he, of course, he's talking about Tank Davis.
And what did Tank say?
Well, Ryan Garcia made a tweet, and he said, "Ivante, you watching this stuff? When we fight, don't let it be like this."
And what did
and he said, "Shut the fuck up."
Oh, man.
I was like, but I mean, the thing is, like, you had, of course, Ryan Garcia, be in attendance at the Barclays Center. for a Tank's fight that was last weekend. And for me, it's basically with him being in attendance for that, they're pretty much setting up the stuff for him, Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis to face each other. And I said y'all might as well strike on this while y'all can. I mean, it's probably the biggest fight that can be made as far as like from a pop culture standpoint, or given fan bases, or actually anybody within the age range of 18 to like 27, 28, maybe. This is the quote unquote social media fight of the decade, or whatever it could be, or whatever it is, right? So they're just trying to have Garcia had this particular bout. He'd be fairly active. You know what I'm saying? He'd have this bout, and his previous bout against Manuel Tego. So it would be Tego, and then Javier Fortuna, and then after that it would be Tank Davis. Tank Davis, in the interim, will he face anyone? Like I said, it might be Michelle Rivera. Who knows? But if that's the case, then I think his fight against Rivera or whoever his opponent is going to be around October, or by October. Yeah, that'll be October. As far as like big fights are concerned, you would have, like I said, Canelo against that Golovkin guy in September. You would have Tank Davis fighting in October, and you would have Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford in November. And that would kind of like shape up what would be the events, so to speak, in boxing over the second half of the year. So that's kind of like what I'm looking at as far as like that overall schedule or whatnot, in that sense. But with Devin Haney, like I said, I mean, it should be. I want to see like how not only like boxing fans, but like the public kind of like react to Devin Haney, getting this win to become the undisputed champion at lightweight. Because, everyone talks about this whole Four Kings stuff and whatever all these other guys are doing. But Devin Haney just said, hey, this is what I want to do in order to prove to the people that I am the best lightweight out there. And so that's what he's going to have. He's going to say, hey, I'm the best lightweight. I'm the undisputed champion. It doesn't matter who's out there. It could be Teofimo Lopez, Vasyl Lomachenko, Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, Isaac Cruz, or whatever. All of them ain't me. All of them ain't the champ. I'm the champ. And so that's going to be one thing on his end of the bargain. And it'll be interesting to see how Top Rank treats Devin Haney in this sense, given what has happened, of course, over many, many, many years before Terrence Crawford stepped up and put up that lawsuit against Top Rank, which, from what I'm hearing, it didn't really go very far. But either way, I mean, even after that, you got, of course, Stevenson against Oscar Valdez pretty quickly. And now you get Devin Haney under them, and he gets this immediate shot for an undisputed title. So we'll see how Top Rank treats Devin Haney after him becoming the undisputed champion or whatnot.
And just one last thing. I know we probably get ready to wrap up.
Yeah.
Say for example, there's a rematch with Kambosos and Haney, and of course, if that's the case, we all know how we expect that to go. Does Top Rank have further options on Haney to keep him under contract, or does Haney have the opportunity to go back to being his own, in a sense, free agent?
I had to see. I think it was like a minimum of 3-fight deal, and even in the known history of Top Rank, they do give those Top Rank specials where if you're still a champion, they had that option to extend the contract. So at the very minimum, he has one other fight after the rematch, if the rematch does happen. And that's why I think like Lomachenko is still out there as far as like a guy that Devin Haney would face. But I still feel like, with Vasyl Lomachenko, his time is kind of like limited in a sense, as far as like what he could do in his professional career. Of course, he hasn't had that many fights, but with him, having that extended career at amateur, being 27 years old and fighting 18-year-olds at 27 or whatever it was. He wanted to, I guess, have fun as amateur, and so he did what he did as amateur. And then he does, had his old fights as a pro, and like I said, I wonder how Top Rank, tweets Devin Haney, because you have this whole propaganda machine behind Vasily Lomachenko, where some people want to erase 1 or 2 losses off of Vasily Lomachenko's record, but now we're gonna see what Lomachenko could do here in this particular instance against someone like a Devin Haney, who's much bigger, much stronger, faster than him, and could have the footwork that would be more than what Vasily Lomachenko has seen over the course of his career. That's why he's had issues ever since he's been at lightweight. Like, for me, he's dealt with issues. He had dealt with issues when he faced Jorge Linares. He had issues, when he was facing Pedraza, to a certain extent. Even with like Luke Campbell, in a couple times he did have a couple issues because of the size. And so, with that being said, it's like, you're going up against someone like a Teofimo Lopez, who's much younger, much bigger, and has the hands and has power. That's why you couldn't really engage with someone like Teofimo Lopez, because he knows that if he gets cracked by Lopez, he's gonna get dropped. So he didn't want to try all that. He didn't want to take that risk. So if he goes up against someone like a Devin Haney, he might have real issues. And like I said, if he goes up against Devin Haney's gonna stop him. And we all know that if he goes up against Tank Davis is gonna knock him clean out. Saying that right now. Goes up against Tank Davis is gonna knock him clean out. So that's the options there for Vasily Lomachenko. If he feels like he wants to cash out, hey, you got 2 options there, buddy. You got Devin Haney and you got Tank Davis. Pick one. And that's the thing on that. So if they feel like, hey, Vasily Lomachenko, what would be the most lucrative route for him? They better pick that quick, because he's there at 34 years old, and he's had that extended career over in the amateurs, and I said it from the get-go. Once he hit lightweight, I said that's his limit. That's his limit. Like he can't really do that much more after that, and he ain't getting any younger, of course. So he better figure out what he's gonna do here real quick. Talking about going up against someone like a Richard Comey, and he talking about, he showed out against Richard Comey. I'm like, what? But many people say, like, Richard Comey. I'm like, yeah, he did win a world title, but yeah, he got cracked in 2 rounds by Teofimo Lopez. So what is Richard Comey really, in a sense? So I'd be very interested to see if Top Rank is really trying to set up that bout between Devin Haney and Vasily Lomachenko if there is no rematch between Haney and Kambosos. Otherwise, you can't have Lomachenko just sitting around waiting on something to happen, because we're getting to be about 6 months? 6 months, and we don't know what Lomachenko's next fight is. So they're gonna have to make a move on that. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see.
Yeah, and just one last point. Like, for example, with Top Rank, for example, for one, Bob Arum was very, very quiet at the post-conference presser. Very quiet. Had next to nothing to say, right? Even when he was, Haney's father, Bill Haney, came at him, hey, what's up, Bob? What you think? Had very little to say, but you already know Arum's just sitting there thinking, trying to think one step ahead, how they can benefit Top Rank. And one thing that's what I was kind of just curious about in regards to Haney, if Top Rank has options on him, how long can they keep him, especially with the absence of Terrence Crawford from this table, right? So he's thinking about trying to how can they quickly replace the top talent, and Haney is a top talent, given that what he's done and what he's accomplished at this point now. So it's even something like what Shakur Stevenson, Haney in this stable, things like that, and whatever else they can do to maintain their top status as far as being a top promotion firm. So me personally, I want Haney to get up out of there and go back to being his own promotional free agent, and not have to worry about being what would say handled like they handle Crawford. I don't want. I do not want to be subject to those things like that. So, because he's already proven that I can go out there, negotiate my own deal, whether that be back with the zone or whoever it may be, and do what I need to do, and not have to be dependent upon a promoter, especially evil one like Top Rank.
Yeah, I'm like he's Devin Haney, even at the age that he's at, like since he was like 20 or 21, maybe even 19, he has had his own promotional company, and with that being said, that kind of like says that, hey, I'm like I should get more out of the deal that other fighters usually get, So, with that being said, like what is it going to take in order for him to put himself in a position to get the best deals out there, regardless of who he fights, So my thing would be like, if it's not going to be the rematch here against George Kambosos, who is going to fight next? And is that going to be like how it was, where he's kind of like the main promoter, or be like a partial promoter in these deals? So we'll see how that turns out here for Devin Haney, especially with him, like you said, being under Top Rank. But yeah, with that being said, that is me. I'm going to wrap it up here for this particular episode. For the next one, it will likely be on Monday, June 13th. Either that, or we'll see what happens on Sunday, because during the weekend, I will be on site for the International Boxing Hall of Fame induction ceremony. That will be, like I said, like it's going to be the biggest one that's out there, of course, because they are going to officially induct 3 classes: 2020, 2021, and 2022. So you're going to have, all of those fighters in there from, Miguel Cotto. Well, Miguel Cotto's in this class. Roy Jones Jr. is in this class. Holly Holm is in this class. James Toney is in this class. The 2021 class includes Layla Ali, Vladimir Klitschko, Ann Wolfe, Andre Ward, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. And then 2020's class includes people like Shane Mosley, Juan Manuel Marquez, Christy Martin, Bernard Hopkins, and Lucia Riker. So that's like a whole lot of people. What is this like? That's like 15. It's going to be a total of 15, 16, 17 people that will be inducted this year. So from June 9th to June 12th is that ceremony, but I'll be there on June 11th and June 12th scheduled. So that's going to be a big event there. And we'll see what I can do in reference to that. But I might end up going live on YouTube, possibly for the induction ceremony earlier in the day on June 12th. So if I do that, y'all will know later on down the line. But yeah, that's it as far as like this particular episode of the Boxing Source Radio Show. Thank Boxing Academic and Terrell for joining in on this one. And like I said, at the end of every show, folks, supporting boxing is a hit and not get hit, not a stand and trade. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a good evening, everybody.
Later.